in the vast, inky darkness between the stars, where silence is more deafening than thunder, and distances stretch far beyond human dreams, there's a simple truth every spacefaring civilization eventually learns. The universe doesn't care about your pride. It doesn't bow to your accomplishments. It just watches, eternal and patient, as empires rise and crumble like sandcastles against the relentless tide of time. Captain Dmitry Volkov had spent 30 years of his life learning this very lesson. He was standing at the observation window of Earth's orbital command center, his gaze fixed on the cargo ships drifting lazily between stations. Their running lights blinked like scattered fireflies against the black canvas of space. His face was a roadmap of experience, weathered by solar radiation and the weight of hard decisions. His gray hair was cropped short, military style, and his eyes held a profound calm, the kind you only find in someone who has survived situations that should have ended them. 3 steps behind him stood Lieutenant Priya Sharma, clutching a data tablet to her chest. She was young, barely 30, with sharp, dark eyes that missed nothing, and a mind that processed information faster than most ship computers. She'd been Dimitri's aide for 2 years, and in that time, she had learned to read his silences the way ancient sailors read the wind. The message had arrived 17 minutes ago, and for 17 minutes, Dmitri just stared at the stars. "Sir?" Priya finally broke the silence, her voice steady. "The Council is requesting your assessment." Dmitri didn't turn. "They want to know if we should be afraid." "Yes, sir." "What do you think, Lieutenant?" Priya considered his question carefully. The message was from the Varanthi hegemony, rulers of over 900 star systems, masters of technologies that humanity could barely comprehend. They'd been watching Earth for decades, monitoring humanity's expansion with the detached curiosity of giants observing ants. And now they wanted to meet. "I think," Priya said slowly, "that beings who control 900 systems don't send invitations unless they have a purpose. And that purpose is rarely beneficial for the one being invited." Dmitri finally turned, a small, knowing smile crossing his lips. "Very good. The Varanthi have a tradition. When they encounter a new species, they invite them to their capital for what they call a demonstration of understanding. They show the newcomers their power. They display the wreckage of every civilization that ever dared to challenge them." "A trophy room," Priya murmured. "Exactly. Perfectly preserved ships from 100 conquered species, floating in space as a permanent reminder of what happens to those who resist." Dmitri walked to his desk and sat down heavily. "According to our intel, no species has ever chosen to fight after seeing the demonstration. They all join the hegemony peacefully. And if we refuse the invitation, then they'll assume we're hostile and act accordingly." Dmitri pulled the message up on his screen, reading it again. The words were polite, almost friendly, but underneath them was the unmistakable weight of a threat. "We have 3 weeks to prepare our diplomatic delegation. Who will lead it?" Dmitri looked at her, his gaze steady and unwavering. "I will, and I want you with me, along with Dr. Benjamin Okafor from the Xenanthropology Department. Also, bring Commander Wei Zhang from Military Intelligence. She's been studying the hegemony for 15 years. Priya nodded, her fingers flying across her tablet as she made the notes. Then she paused. "Sir, may I ask why you aren't more concerned?" "The reports say the Varanthi have never lost a conflict." "Because they've never fought humans," Dmitri replied simply. "We're new to space, Lieutenant. 400 years among the stars is nothing compared to their 10,000. But we have something they don't understand yet." "What is that?" Dmitri stood and walked back to the window. Outside, a passenger liner was departing for the colonies, its hull gleaming with reflected sunlight. Thousands of ordinary people, heading out to build new lives on distant worlds, carrying with them the same stubborn determination that had pushed their ancestors across oceans and continents. "We have never stopped fighting," he said quietly. "We have never learned how to surrender." Every war, every disaster, every catastrophe in human history has taught us the same lesson. We survive. We adapt. We overcome. The Varanthi think they can frighten us into submission with a display of dead ships and conquered enemies. But they don't understand what we are. And what are we, sir? Dmitri smiled, and there was something fierce in it, something ancient and unyielding. We are the species that walked out of Africa with nothing but stone tools and conquered an entire planet. We are the ones who looked at the moon and decided to walk on it. We are the civilization that survived ice ages, plagues, and world wars, and still reached for the stars. Fear is not a weapon that works on humanity, Lieutenant. Fear is what we eat for breakfast. The next 3 weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. The diplomatic vessel, the Endurance, was readied for the journey. Its hull was freshly painted, its systems checked and rechecked until they were flawless. The crew was hand-picked, every member chosen for their exceptional skill and their calm under immense pressure. Dr. Benjamin Okafor spent those weeks buried in data, reviewing every scrap of information humanity had on the Varanthi. He was a gentle man with silver-rimmed spectacles and the patient demeanor of someone who spent his life studying beings vastly different from himself. He'd authored 14 books on alien psychology and had advised 3 presidents on interstellar relations. Commander Wei Zheng was his polar opposite. She was sharp, intense, with a military bearing that never seemed to relax, even in a casual conversation. Her specialty was threat assessment, and she had been the one sounding the alarm about the Varanthi for years. Together with Dmitri and Priya, they formed an unlikely team. A weathered captain, a brilliant young officer, a gentle scholar, and a hardened intelligence analyst. But as the Endurance prepared to depart, it carried something else on board, something the Varanthi could never have anticipated. Deep in the ship's computer core, stored safely in crystal memory matrices, was the complete historical archive of human civilization. Every ship humanity had ever built. Every battle we had ever fought. Every single victory and every single defeat, catalogued and preserved in perfect, unflinching detail. Dmitri had requested it personally, and he hadn't explained why. Some things he knew were better shown than told. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. The Endurance dropped out of faster-than-light travel right at the edge of the Varanthi home system. For a long, silent moment, nobody on the bridge spoke. The view was simply too overwhelming for words. The Varanthi capital world hung in the darkness like a jewel, carved from emerald and sapphire. Its surface was covered with vast cities, glowing with soft light, and orbiting it were 17 massive stations, each one larger than anything humanity had ever constructed. Ships moved between the stations in endless streams. Thousands of vessels, from small personal craft to enormous cargo haulers that could have swallowed Earth's largest battleships whole. Priya, the ship's science officer, was the first to find her voice. "Their smallest station," she whispered, "is twice the size of our largest orbital colony. They have had 10,000 years to build," Dr. Okafor said softly from his station. "We have to remember that. 10,000 years ago, humans were still learning to farm. They were already crossing between stars." Commander Zhang, our security chief, said nothing. Her eyes moved constantly, cataloging defensive positions, weapon placements, patrol patterns. Her expression remained neutral, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. "I'm Captain Dmitri Volkov, and this was our first contact with the dominant power in this arm of the galaxy." A communication request flashed on the main screen. I nodded to the comms officer, who opened the channel. The face that appeared was unlike anything in human experience. The Varanthi were tall, nearly 3 meters in height, with skin that seemed to be made of living crystal. Their faces had no visible mouth or nose, only a cluster of 7 eyes arranged in a flower pattern. When they spoke, their voices came from somewhere in their chest, a deep resonance that vibrated right in your bones. Human vessel endurance, Vivaranthi said. I am primary observer Thelion. You are welcome in our space. Please follow the guidance signal to Ceremonial Station 3. The Grand Arbiter awaits your presence. The channel closed without waiting for a response. Friendly, Zhao muttered under her breath. They see no need for pleasantries, Okafor explained. In their culture, efficiency is the highest virtue. Small talk is considered wasteful. They aren't being rude by their standards. Their standards are not my concern, I replied. I stood and straightened my uniform. Everyone knows their role. We observe. We learn. We do not show fear. Whatever they display, we watch with calm interest. Nothing more. The docking procedure took nearly an hour. Ceremonial Station 3 was designed for occasions just like this, with docking bays large enough for ships from 100 different species. The Endurance was guided to a port near the station's center, where a welcoming committee waited. Primary Observer Thelion stood at the front, flanked by 6 other Veroniki and a dozen beings from other species. These were the recent additions to the hegemony, representatives from civilizations that had joined in the last century. Their body language ranged from nervous to resigned. Captain Volkov, Thelion said as I led my delegation down the boarding ramp. We have studied your species with great interest. Your expansion has been remarkably swift. We are an ambitious people, I replied, keeping my tone level. Indeed, ambition is valuable when properly directed. The hegemony has learned over millennia that the greatest achievements come through unity. Individual species, working alone, can accomplish only limited things. But together, under proper guidance, civilizations can build wonders that last forever. Proper guidance, meaning Varanthi guidance, I stated, not as a question. Thelion's 7 eyes blinked in a pattern that might have been amusement. We have the most experience. It is logical that we lead. But come, the other delegates are already gathering. The demonstration will begin soon. We were led through corridors of impossible beauty. The walls seemed to be grown rather than built, flowing curves of crystalline material that shifted color as we walked. Artwork from countless worlds decorated the spaces, showing scenes of life from all across the hegemony. The observation amphitheater was the largest enclosed space I had ever seen. It could have held 100,000 beings, and it was nearly full. Species of every description filled the seats, arranged in sections marked with their world symbols. Our delegation was guided to a small area near the front, with a perfect view of the massive viewport that dominated one wall. Beyond, it was open space, empty, dark, and waiting. A hush fell over the amphitheater as the lights dimmed. A holographic image appeared above a raised platform at the front, showing a Varanthi who radiated authority. This one was larger than the others. Its crystalline skin shot through with veins of gold. Grand Arbiter Selenith, Okafor whispered, the supreme ruler of the hegemony. Welcome, honored guests. The Grand Arbiter's voice filled the amphitheater. Today, we gather to welcome humanity into our community. But first, as is tradition, we offer understanding. The universe is vast and dangerous. Many species have thought themselves strong enough to stand alone. Many have learned otherwise. What you are about to witness is not a threat. It is simply truth. The Grand Arbiter raised one crystalline hand, and the space beyond the viewport began to shimmer. Dimensional gates opened like wounds in reality, and ships began to emerge. First dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. They were ships of every possible design, from sleek predatory vessels to massive dreadnoughts bristling with weapons. They were arranged in perfect formations, hanging motionless in space, their running lights dark. They were all dead ships, trophy ships. The Viserion Combine, the Grand Arbiter intoned as a section of the fleet was highlighted. They believed their psychic abilities made them invincible. Their war lasted 3 years. Another section lit up. The Iron Confederation. They built ships that could survive direct hits from stellar weapons. Their war lasted 7 months. More and more sections were highlighted, each one with a name and a span of time. The Crystalline Collective, 2 years. The Void Walkers, 16 months. The Solar Imperium, 4 years and 3 days. The list went on and on. I watched with a face of stone. Beside me, Priya was pale but steady. Zhang was taking mental notes, analyzing ship designs, assessing capabilities. Okafor was watching the other delegations, observing how fear spread through the amphitheater like ripples in water. 847 species have joined the hegemony, the Grand Arbiter continued. Most came peacefully, recognizing the wisdom of unity. But 112 chose to resist. 112 believed they could fight alone against the combined might of civilizations that had mastered space travel. Before their ancestors learned to walk upright, the Grand Arbiter paused, and all 7 eyes seemed to focus directly on us. 112 wars. 112 victories. 112 additions to the trophy fleet. This is the reality of the universe. Humans. The strong lead. The wise follow. Those who do neither become memories. The demonstration continued for another hour. More ships emerged from dimensional storage. Weapons platforms from shattered civilizations. Space stations that had once housed billions. Even a few captured planets, kept in dimensional bubbles, their surfaces scarred by orbital bombardment. When it finally ended, the lights came back up slowly. The Grand Arbiter looked out over the amphitheater. You have seen our truth. Now we invite humanity to speak. Tell us, Captain Volkov, what is your response? Every eye in the amphitheater turned toward us. I stood slowly. I brushed a piece of imaginary lint from my uniform and walked to the front of our section. When I spoke, my voice was calm and clear, carrying across the vast hall. Grand Arbiter, I thank you for this demonstration. It was very educational. But before we give our formal response, humanity would like to offer a demonstration of our own. With your permission. A ripple of confusion passed through the assembled delegates. This was not how things were supposed to go. Species were supposed to be cowed, frightened, ready to submit. The Grand Arbiter's eyes narrowed slightly. You wish to show us something? Yes, our history, our story. If you would indulge us. There was a long pause. Then the Grand Arbiter inclined its massive head. Very well. Show us what humanity considers worthy of display. I turned to Priya and nodded. She activated her tablet, linking it to the station's holographic projectors through a diplomatic protocol that the Varanthi themselves had provided. And then, in the heart of the hegemony's power, the human story began to unfold. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more. We'll see you in the next one. The holographic display flickered to life above the amphitheater. At first, the assembled delegates saw nothing impressive. Just a small blue planet, third from an unremarkable yellow star, spinning slowly in the darkness of space. This is Earth, Dmitri said, his voice carrying across the vast chamber. 400 years ago, we had never left this world. We had no faster-than-light travel. We had no energy shields or plasma weapons. We were alone, isolated, unaware that the universe was filled with civilizations far older and more powerful than ourselves. The image shifted, showing primitive rockets lifting off from launch pads, trailing fire and smoke. These were our first spacecraft, chemical rockets. Fragile tubes of metal that exploded as often as they flew. Our first astronauts knew that every launch might be their last. They went anyway. Murmurs rippled through the alien delegates. The Varanthi remained silent, watching with unreadable expressions. But our history does not begin with spacecraft, Dmitri continued. It begins much earlier. It begins with loss. The hologram changed again. Now it showed something that made several delegates gasp audibly. a planet being struck by a massive asteroid, continents burning, oceans boiling, life dying on a scale that defied comprehension. 66 million years ago, an asteroid struck our world. It killed nearly every large creature on the planet. The dominant species of that era, great reptiles that had ruled for 170 million years, were wiped out almost completely. Life on Earth nearly ended that day. Dmitri paused, letting the image sink in. But it did not end. Small creatures survived. They adapted. They evolved. And eventually, they became us. The hologram began showing a rapid sequence of images. Ice ages that covered continents and glaciers. Volcanic eruptions that darkened skies for years. Plagues that killed millions. Floods and droughts and famines that should have driven humanity to extinction again and again. We have been fighting for survival since before we were truly human, Dmitri said. Our ancestors faced predators with nothing but sharpened sticks. They crossed frozen wastelands with animal skins for warmth. They built civilizations in deserts where nothing should grow and on mountainsides where the air itself was too thin to breathe easily. The images shifted to human conflict. Ancient battles with swords and shields, medieval sieges, the trenches of world wars, filled with mud and death and unimaginable horror. We have also fought each other, constantly, brutally. We have committed terrible acts against our own kind. We have burned cities and salted fields and done things that shame us to remember. Dmitri's voice grew quieter, but somehow it carried even further. But we have also rebuilt. Every time. After every disaster, every war, every catastrophe that should have broken us forever, we have picked up the pieces and started again. This is what humans do. This is what we have always done. The hologram now showed something different. Ships, human ships, but not the sleek vessels of the current fleet. These were old ships, ancient by spacefaring standards. Colony ships that had carried thousands of people across the void to distant worlds, knowing that many would not survive the journey. Exploration vessels that had pushed into unknown space, their crews accepting that they might never return home. When we first reached the stars, we lost many ships. Our technology was primitive. Our understanding was limited. We made mistakes that cost thousands of lives. Names began scrolling across the hologram. Ship names, followed by crew counts and dates. The horizon, 412 souls, lost to reactor failure in deep space. The new beginning, 1,017 souls, destroyed by an uncharted asteroid field. The promise of tomorrow, 863 souls, vanished without trace in the outer colonies. The list went on, and on, and on. These are our trophy ships, Dmitri said softly. These are the vessels we lost, learning to cross the stars. Not enemies we defeated, not civilizations we conquered. These are our own people who died so that others could follow. The amphitheater had grown completely silent. Even the Varanthi were watching with something that might have been surprise. You showed us 112 conquered species, Dmitri continued. You showed us the wreckage of civilizations that dared to resist your power. You wanted us to feel small. You wanted us to understand that resistance is futile. He turned to face the Grand Arbiter directly. But Grand Arbiter, you have shown us nothing we have not already seen. You have shown us nothing we have not already survived. The hologram changed one final time. It showed Earth again, but now the planet was surrounded by orbital stations and shipyards. Ships moved in constant streams, carrying goods and people and hope to colonies spread across 300 star systems. Cities gleamed on a dozen different worlds, each one built by human hands on soil that had never known human footsteps before. 400 years, Dmitri said. In 400 years, we went from chemical rockets to faster-than-light travel. We went from one world to 300. We did this while learning, while failing, while losing ships and people and sometimes entire colonies. We did this without anyone to guide us, without anyone to protect us, without anyone to show us the way. He smiled then, and there was warmth in it, but also something fierce and unbreakable. You ask us to join your hegemony. You offer us protection and guidance and the wisdom of 10,000 years. And perhaps in time we will accept. Perhaps we will find that unity with other species brings benefits we cannot achieve alone. The smile faded, replaced by quiet determination. But we will not be frightened into submission. We will not bow because you show us the corpses of those who came before. We have our own corpses, Grand Arbiter. We have our own losses. And we are still here. Dmitri reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object. It was a stone, rough and gray, unremarkable in every way. This stone comes from a place on Earth called Normandy. 80 years before we reached the stars, a great war was fought there. Thousands of young humans climbed out of boats and ran directly into weapon fire. Many died before they took 10 steps. But they kept coming. Wave after wave, they kept coming, until finally they reached the shore and began to push back against an enemy that had conquered most of their world. He held up the stone so everyone could see it. This is what we are, Grand Arbiter. We are the species that runs toward danger. We are the civilization that looks at impossible odds and says, let us try anyway. Your trophy fleet is impressive. Your power is undeniable. But if you think that fear alone will make us kneel, then you do not understand humanity at all. The amphitheater remained silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, the Grand Arbiter rose from its seat. Its 7 eyes studied Dmitri with an intensity that seemed to pierce through flesh and bone. You are either very brave or very foolish, Captain Volkov. We have been called both many times, Dmitri replied. Usually by people who later became our friends. Another pause. Then something remarkable happened. The Grand Arbiter made a sound that resonated through the chamber, a deep vibration that seemed to come from its very core. It took a moment for the universal translators to process it. The Grand Arbiter was laughing. In 10,000 years, the Grand Arbiter said, no species has ever responded to the demonstration this way. They have begged. They have threatened. They have wept. But none have ever stood before us and said, we have lost more than you know, and we are still standing. The Grand Arbiter stepped down from its platform and walked toward the human delegation. The other Varanthis shifted uneasily, clearly uncertain what was happening. Perhaps, the Grand Arbiter said, stopping directly in front of Dmitri, we have been approaching this wrong for a very long time. Perhaps unity should not be built on fear. Perhaps it should be built on respect. Dmitri met the Grand Arbiter's gaze without flinching. Humanity would welcome that conversation. Then let us have it. Not as masters and servants. Not as conquerors and conquered. But as equals, learning from each other. The Grand Arbiter extended one crystalline hand. Dmitri took it, and in that moment, something changed. Not just for humanity, but for the entire hegemony. For the first time in 10,000 years, a new species had joined not through fear, but through mutual recognition. 2 civilizations, vastly different in age and power, choosing to walk forward together. Priya watched from her seat, tears forming in her eyes that she quickly blinked away. Dr. Okafor was smiling softly, already thinking about the papers he would write. Commander Jung allowed herself a small nod of approval. They had come expecting to be intimidated. They were leaving as partners. And somewhere, across the vast distances of space, on a small blue planet circling an unremarkable yellow star, billions of humans continued their daily lives, unaware that their future had just changed forever. They went to work and raised their children and dreamed their dreams, carrying within them the same stubborn spirit that had brought their species from caves to stars. The universe was vast and dangerous, and filled with powers beyond human comprehension. But humanity had faced darkness before. They had faced extinction and war and despair, and they had survived every time. They would survive this too, because that was what humans did. They endured, they adapted, they overcame, and they never, ever stopped reaching for the stars.